Hi, I'm Trevor.
And I'm Kyle. And this week, Trevor caught up on The Edge from 1997. This stars Sir Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin, and I'm the African American gentleman. I can't place his name. I believe he's from The Matrix, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he plays Link in the Matrix sequels, and I also know him from the Romeo Cross Juliet movie. I believe he played Mercutio. He was one of the standout performances in a very strange film.
Harold Perrineau, but Steven is his name in the film.
Yeah.
And then L.Q. Jones. I always like him when he pops up.
Yeah, he's always welcome. He has just a delightful voice.
He does.
He has that knowing smile, too, where it's like, I don't know if you're going to screw me over or what's going on here, but I want to like you.
The Mask of Zorro movie, he's Three-Fingered Jack, the legendary Three-Fingered Jack in there. My parents were watching it when I was visiting them. That movie's not that great.
If I remember right, he's in Hey, I like The Mask of Zorro.
Yeah,
I really like The Mask of Zorro. Don't you talk shit about that. If I remember right, he was in Lone Wolf McQuade with Chuck Norris.
It is very possible. He is from Texas, and as you know, Chuck Norris, or Carlos, is a Texas Ranger. This I'll just give the plot real quick. Anthony Hopkins plays a billionaire, and he accompanies his wife, and who's a model, and her photography crew that are going to be shooting her, and they're headed to Alaska, this remote location, for just a shoot. Alec Baldwin plays a photographer, and while they're there, they decide to take an 80-mile trip to go get a picture of this Native American guy. He's not at his cabin, so they decide they're going to go to where he's hunting. Plane crashes, and then pilot dies. Anthony Hopkins, Alec Baldwin, and Steven have to basically walk out of the Alaskan wilderness on the not quite winter, they're saying, but it's pretty much right on the cusp of winter. So they are in the elements, and they are not prepared at all. So you have actually seen this movie, but you were very, very young and you do not remember it, which we count.
I count this as a catching up because I remember fragments of this. Like, there were certain elements that, because I knew some of the story reveals, it actually made it more enjoyable, I think, to watch. Because there's certain character moments where people give each other looks, and there's certain props that have more significance if you're in the know ahead of time. Mm-hmm. That it pointed to like skillful filmmaking, because again, I came into this basically not remembering most of it, but there were certain things I was picking up on that I was like, oh, okay, we're doing the foreshadowing thing. That means something. I should probably key in on that. It's a sign of a skillful eye on the part of the director and the cinematographer.
It's interesting you say that the one guy is from Romeo plus Juliet is the same cinematographer.
I want to say right up front, there were a handful of credits. This movie opens with, I think, just a white screen with credits, or a black screen with white credits, and there were a couple of names that popped up that as soon as I saw them, I was like, oh, fuck, really? Mm-hmm. So my very first note about this movie actually was from note 1, Jerry Goldsmith lets you know he's entered the room. Mm-hmm. Jerry Goldsmith is one of my favorite composers. I think he's one of everyone's favorite composers.
Yeah, pretty
much.
Because
he's amazing. He put in a good effort for this film. His score is a huge part of the film, and from note 1, I was like, "That's Jerry Goldsmith." Like without doing any research, I was like, "I know who that is." But then, as the credits were rolling, I noticed Lee Tamahori as the director. I know he's a Kiwi. He's from New Zealand, and the main thing I know him for is Die Another Day, which is universally regarded as the worst James Bond movie. And what's amazing about it, though, is that this film bears almost no similarities to that. It's hard for me to wrap my head around that. It's like, that's the same guy?
Yeah, What's interesting, so Donald McAlpine he's the cinematographer. He's worked on a lot of very well-known movies, Moulin Rouge, The Dressmaker, Predator. But sometimes when I'm watching this, I'm like, the cinematography is almost too good. Like, it looks like just photographs. Like, we're just looking at a photograph of mountains, but then you see people walking. There's several really, really, really good shots in this movie where I'm just like, that's almost too good.
No, absolutely. The the wilderness in this film is very welcoming in some ways. What's funny though is I didn't do any research on this film. Everything that came to me came from just taking the film in, which I think is a good way to view it. But the other credit that jumped out at me was David Mamet as the writer.
Yep.
Glengarry Glen Ross and Alec Baldwin. Apparently, I think he actually wrote the play that the movie was based on. So it's very much his baby. And there's a lot of snappy dialogue in this movie that, for a wilderness adventure film, you wouldn't expect to find it there. So it's an interesting combination of elements.
Well, there is quite a bit, and I think that might be the reason why you have Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin, is because they're both... Anthony Hopkins, his character's interesting in this movie. We'll get into him.
Absolutely.
But he actually has there's a Hannibal Lecter moment in here, and it's be careful of the deadfall, if you remember that scene.
Put a pin in that.
Yeah. But yeah, do you want to dive into it here?
Yeah. So right off the bat, I think our first discernible image in the film looks like a whale's tail, and it's like the tail of a biplane, a propeller plane, and we like tilt down from it, and it's Anthony Hopkins and his merry band of young folks. Mm-hmm. There's like a couple of decades age difference between everyone else and him. His wife is played by Elle Macpherson, by the way. In the 90s.
Prim. This is a prime.
Yeah, she's doing just fine. So he's this billionaire, and he has the supermodel of supermodels as his wife. And right off the bat, we're pulling up to this Alaskan lodge. No, it's a garage, and right off the bat, we get an exchange between Anthony Hopkins and a mechanic, who makes a comment about like, "Oh boy, I wish I had me one of those." Yeah. And instantly, Anthony Hopkins assumes that he's talking about
his model wife.
Yeah, his super hot model wife, and
his
then the
supermodel wife who's playing a model in this movie.
Yeah. I don't know if the guy was just thinking very quickly on his feet, or if he was being genuine, but I
think he was being genuine.
I think he was being genuine. I don't think that guy is that quick. Basically, he says, I was referencing the plane.
If you're a plane mechanic, I think you're probably a plane nerd. I think you can be a car mechanic and not be a car nerd, but I think if you're a mechanic for planes, you're a nerd about it.
It's a very specialized thing.
Very much.
Yeah. But yeah, he mentions like the exact model of the plane. Anthony Hopkins is like, oh, okay. I don't have to kill you now. But we get this funny line where Anthony Hopkins' handlers, they come up behind him and they're like, the plane's ready, let's go. And they call him by his name, which is Charles Morse.
Charles. They're like, Charles, and he says, okay, Mr. Morris, and he's like, Charles Morris? The billionaire. And he's just like, yeah.
Yeah, he just says, yeah. And then he's so aloof. It's perfect.
He looks like he's always thinking, like he's like on a debate team or something. Like he's just always thinking. Like this is how he looks the whole time.
Well, Anthony Hopkins plays contemplative and wily, like very well, and he was very well cast in this role.
Oh, very much.
And that delivery actually kind of reminded me of his Van Helsing in the Bram Stoker Dracula.
Oh my gosh!
Where he has a thing he does where somebody will say something horrific and like tell him something crazy supernatural, and his reaction is just to go, yeah.
I don't remember that.
Like, at all. Yeah, that's interesting.
I only remember Gary Oldman climbing up the wall. I think it's the only thing I can remember.
Oh, the really awkward like sped up footage of him like herky jerky going up the wall. Yeah. I remember that image in particular from when I was a kid. I was like, that just looked stupid.
So
and his butt hair.
they've gotten to the first little airport and now they're getting on a smaller
first leg of the journey.
Yeah, they're getting on a smaller plane, which is apparently the same plane from 6 Days and 7 Nights that Harrison Ford flew.
I enjoy that movie.
Yeah, oddly, right? It's
I like that movie.
Oddly enjoyable movie. So he gets a gift from, I'm guessing, his assistant or something like that. It's his birthday that day, and he got a book, and it's Lost in the Wilds. It's actually not a real book. So I looked at it, I'm like, oh, this looks like a cool book to have. It was made for the movie. I'm sure there's similar books, but this one in particular is not.
It's just a nature survival guide.
Yeah, especially in the north, the northwest is what it was saying. But I like the location of the cabin hotel. I thought that was pretty neat. I don't know if it's real or if they built it for the movie, like the exterior. It very well could be, but I'm not entirely sure.
I want to say it was real.
You want to say it's really cool on the inside. I really like it. I'd love to go stay there. But they get there and they meet. What's his name in the movie?
Is that LQ?
LQ, but I can't think of his name in the movie. But he's
just call him LQ.
He's bookend. He's only here and then at the end. He's giving him the gist of the place. He's like, built this and blah 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 blah. Make sure that you cover up any food because there's bears out here.
Real problem with bears, and it needs to be said here that LQ has a nasty scar on his face.
Yeah. He mentions that there's no locks on the doors. There's a bear problem. And he's like, if you come up on a bear, just look him right in the eye and then back away real slowly. And Alec Baldwin notices a picture on the. He notices, like, it looks like a really old black and white picture of a Native American gentleman, and he's just like, oh, this is such an amazing photo. You almost have to go back to this time to get a picture. He's like, when was that taken? And he's like, last week, or like last month, or last year.
LQ's like, I took it a week ago.
I took it last year. And
me, an untrained photographer, took this amazing photo like a week ago.
Yeah. Alec Baldwin's character, he's very much, I want to say a slime ball. That's the word I want to use to describe him. Very go-go city guy, very quick, and he's condescending, I would say, quite a bit as well. Just an asshole, goofball, or a slime ball asshole.
He's not a very genuine person.
No.
He wears a lot of masks. He has a moment a little bit later that speaks to his character big time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you can tell he's meant to be like the consummate like city dweller character of our core cast.
But in the same moment that we're learning that he's kind of a douchebag, when he's telling him about the photo, he's like, "Yeah, that's my friend Jack," and he's like, "He's out bear hunting right now, and I'd be out there with him if you folks weren't here." And he says, "But I haven't got my rifle sighted," and he approaches Anthony Hopkins to talk to him, and he's like, "You interested in books?" And he's like, "Why can't you get your rifle sighted?" And it's totally something that you wouldn't notice. Like, he just kind of just mentioned it in passing, and Anthony Hopkins honed in on that one.
Yeah, Anthony Hopkins, the expert of talking at people while not looking at them. It's something he always fucking does. He's always got his back to people, and he says something incredibly insightful or clever.
He literally knows everything, and they mention it like, oh yeah, he knows everything. Ask him.
Yeah.
He's always reading something.
His wife actually verbatim says that Charles knows everything.
And LQ tries to trick him, and he picks up this paddle that has a jaguar or a panther. I'm sorry, a panther on the front of the oar. And he's like, "I'll give you $5 if you tell me what's on the back of this." And he goes, "It's a rabbit smoking a pipe," and that's exactly what it was. And it's some kind of Native American tale of where the rabbit's smarter than the panther, so he's smoking his pipe unafraid because he's smarter. But a pin in that.
There's going to be a lot of that, by the way.
Yeah.
This is a very tight script in a lot of ways.
But everybody pretty much goes off to bed. I'm guessing it's been a long day of traveling, and we get Anthony Hopkins talking to his wife in the bedroom, and
very awkward exchange, by the way.
It's on purpose, though. It is awkward. But he asks, he's like, "Today's a very special day for me. Do you know why?" And she just doesn't even acknowledge what he asks, and they kind of have a little discussion. She's like, "Hey, will you run downstairs and make me a sandwich?" Which, by the way, she's not eating carbs. She's not eating a ham sandwich. I'm gonna tell you that
he
right
puts
now.
this on white bread, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely not.
No, sir. He actually says to her at some point, she's the only woman he's ever wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And in his very Anthony Hopkins way, it's like, I don't believe you for a second, but sure. It's like, I hear the words coming out of your mouth, but your face isn't really going along with it.
She's light years younger than him, and I'm thinking like a foot taller.
Well, he just doesn't seem like a human being capable of true love.
No, he's a billionaire, and I think
he's not very warm.
He's playing it very well. Yeah, he's not. I think he's sincere, but not very warm. I think that's a good way to describe him.
Yeah, but she's in like a nightgown, and he's like still in his like full. He wears a lot of wool, like, in this movie. Like he's still in his full suit and everything.
Oh yeah, so he goes downstairs. He makes her a sandwich, and the back door is open to the kitchen, and he has a whole ham out. He leaves the ham out. By the way, he makes a sandwich. He shuts the door. And then he comes back to grab the sandwich, and as he's going through the door into like the common area, there's a bear. Actually, it's Alec Baldwin in a bear rug, basically, and they scare the bejesus out of him. It's really dangerous to be trying to scare an old man like this.
Yeah, it's not like explicitly stated how old he's supposed to be, but this is dangerous no matter how old the person is. Pretty well executed scene though, like really good use of tension building and like music, because there's no dialogue here. He's just in the kitchen, and we get some shots of the ham. It's like LQ said don't do that. So right away he's a little alert. Then the door is like creaking open and the wind is blowing it open and shut, and he's like, that's not good either. And when he shuts the door, he does so in like a very violent, fast manner, because you can tell he's like a little freaked out. But yeah, it turns out there's a surprise party because it's his birthday.
So I told Trevor, well, I've seen this a few times, and some of my friends from Seattle, we go backpacking, and I have a good friend named Bob, which is the name of Alec Baldwin's character in this. And we quote this movie quite a bit when we go backpacking. But one thing that we noticed, we're like, how many times does Alec Baldwin or just the cast in general say Charles? And I told Trevor before watching this, I'm like, hey, why don't you keep a Charles count? Because I was going to count too how many times he says it. Well, I was scrolling through the trivia for this movie. Alec Baldwin alone says Charles over 87 times. And he's not even the only character to say Charles in this movie.
You can very easily look up a supercut of every instance of Charles.
Seriously?
In this movie on YouTube.
Wow.
I found it. I didn't watch it because I don't need that in my life.
You don't need to.
But yeah, I didn't bother counting because you are correct. The repetition is incredible. But I think there is some justification for it. Not 100%. But when we get into Alec Baldwin's character, things like that, saying people's name, that's a sales tactic in some ways. And if you're lying on top of that, I could totally see someone unconsciously saying someone's name over and over and over again to like secure your position with them as like, I'm on your side. I like you. You're a good person.
Alec Baldwin,
want to buy a yacht?
Alec Baldwin, he's had an interesting career because he definitely has movies where he gives just great performances, and I think he's funny as shit. I think he's hilarious. 30 Rock is a good show, but anytime he's on screen, he just brings it up. And I think that this is probably one of my favorite performances by him. I think this is a really good character for him to play.
Oh yeah, no, he does it really well, and his role is much more demanding than anyone else in the cast, actually.
Very much.
Like he is asked to do some pretty heavy shit in this movie. He does a lot of the heavy lifting.
So when we have gifts for Charles, and as a kid, I always thought that these gifts sucked, but rewatching it, I'm like, I love these gifts. These are great. He gets a pocket watch, like the old school with the chain from his wife. There's an inscription, like an engraving on the back. I don't think he reads it right now, but she just mentions it. He also gets a new pocket knife, this is a really good pocket knife too because it locks, which is, I have a pocket knife right now that doesn't lock, and I've nearly sliced my finger off a few times trying to do stuff. I'm like, it's actually this is a good pocket knife.
Alec Baldwin gives him the knife.
Yeah.
And LQ points out that
give the man a coin. Yeah.
Because apparently there's a tradition if you give someone a knife, they need to give you a coin. Otherwise, it like fractures the relationship or something. Needs to be said here that when we're first pulling up to the lodge, just like when we were loading up the plane, we get a lot of shots of Anthony Hopkins keying in on instances where his woman is being moved in on, and Alec Baldwin is like shoulder checking her like in a playful manner when they're in the lodge, like bantering and stuff, and we get a shot of Anthony Hopkins' face noticing those.
I mean, because this isn't Beetlejuice or Malice Alec Baldwin, where he was just a dream hunk, but he's aged gracefully, and he's right at that. He's at that.
I hate to say it, but his slightly lighter hair and this way it's styled, he looks a little like Steven.
He does look a little.
He looks a little Steven Baldwin-ish in this.
He has a few moments. I think it's the close-ups on his face where he kind of looks like Steven a bit more. At the end, there's don't tell me what to do. That scene, he kind of looked like Steven. But there's this look that his exchanges with Anthony Hopkins.
Oh, when he gives him the knife and he says thank you and he gives him the coin, his face, he looks so butthurt.
There was the moment he's like an amazing when he talks about the paddle, he's like an amazing accomplishment. He's like, no, it's not an accomplishment. Just read about it. And Alec Baldwin gives him like, oh, is that so? He gives Charles this look at one point, and just in this one look, you can see everything that he hates Charles. He loathes him. I think that Alec Baldwin is his character has been. He's good looking. He's aggressive. Probably got a boss hog. He's just used to everything going well for him. And he's finally met somebody who he should be better than. Like, he's bigger, he's better looking. He's successful, I'm guessing, as a photographer. He's doing well. But Charles is not the same kind of successful. He's far more successful because he's much smarter than Alec Baldwin. And there's just this one look where you can tell that he hates his fucking guts. Just hates him.
Yeah, it's a theme that carries on throughout the movie in terms of his characterization. It's very effective because he has this massive chip on his shoulder, but he's also all too aware of his advantages, I guess. And in fact, like towards the end of the movie, he even says, "I've never done anything," and I think it hangs over him where he's all too aware of that, and yet he's still spiteful and scornful of others who have accomplished. Like, even when LQ mentions that he would be out there hunting bears, like, you can tell that Alec Baldwin's like, I don't hunt bears, but I still kind of hate you for being awesome.
I think that if you were to look at, like, think about it in terms of masculinity.
Absolutely.
You have a spectrum here of LQ, who is very successful and he's very manly. Like, he's a bear hunter. Like, he's got a cabin out in Alaska.
He's got a giant scar on his face.
Yeah,
and
manly.
He talks about sighting in his rifle.
And then Anthony Hopkins, on the other end of the spectrum of masculinity, he is extremely financially successful, which is the top. These are the top tier of the two spectrums. Not to say that one is better than the other, but Alec Baldwin is smack dab in the middle, where he's neither manly nor is he excessively wealthy. And yeah, like you said, like he kind of when he mentions he would have been bear hunting, he's kind of like, yeah, I haven't really done anything. Yeah.
I think this takes us to the morning when we're doing the photo shoot,
which looks cold as hell.
Oh yeah, no, it looks. I mean, I know photo shoots often are very uncomfortable, but yeah. I mean, this is Alaska, and we're in skimpy outfits. And yeah, Elle's posing, they're taking photos, and again, Alec is bantering with her. And of course, it's Alec Baldwin, so he puts on a British accent. It's a stellar accent, just for shits and giggles. I think this is where LQ and Hopkins have a little exchange. So like it starts off as like a heart-to-heart chat, and then it quickly turns into a sales pitch. But in between all this, Alec Baldwin, and this is the scene that I mentioned earlier, where he throws a shit fit. And
about the shoes.
This is a huge demonstration of his character, because he's throwing a shit fit over the most minor of details, and he's chewing out Steven and making a huge scene and making it awkward for everyone. And yeah, it's just over like some shoes that haven't been polished or something.
Yeah. And Anthony Hopkins says, you can use a banana peel to shine shoes. And he looks at Steven like, you should know that.
Yeah, and the quote I wrote down for Alec Baldwin when he's talking about the shoes is, "This is lame. This is really fucking lame."
This is lame. This is really fucking lame. Yeah.
But yeah, the exchange between LQ and Charles is very interesting. I like the way it played out, because they're like talking about the wilderness and like the beauty of this location and its isolation and stuff. Then all of a sudden, like, LQ just like sidles on up to him and pulls out like a spec drawing.
These are like legit plans. Like,
he put some money into this.
Well, I'm assuming that this happens a lot to people who are really wealthy. You just get people, like, if they get a minute alone with you, they take their opportunity, like, hey, I got a sales pitch for you. And I'm sure he's used to it at this point. He does a pretty good job of tricking him. But yeah, he has a layout. LQ wants to turn this little cabin into like a resort.
Yeah, like a lakeside resort. But I really love Charles's reaction to this, because as soon as it becomes clear what's happening, he like actually physically removes himself from the seating area and just like walks away. Basically, he's like, I thought this was a friendly talk, but I guess not.
Yeah. And
it shows that he has zero patience for like pretenders and liars, and people that want to take advantage of him. And it's again an ongoing theme with his character, that because of his wealth, he's forever suspicious of other people, and it's insecurity, I guess, in his character, but it's necessary.
I would be too if I had $1 billion. Like,
well, yeah. No, it would be very difficult to trust other people for, valuing you as a person as opposed to what you can provide and what the opportunities you can present.
Real quick, I had this written down on my first page. I want to say it before I forget. The bear that's in this movie is Bart the Bear, who's also in Legends of the Fall with Anthony Hopkins.
Oh, so they're best buddies.
Yeah, they're best buddies. So moving along, Alec Baldwin, he's getting kind of upset here, because he's like, we're gonna go take the plane basically to go get a picture of this Native American guy, and he's sitting there next to Elle Macpherson. He's just like, see, you almost have to go back. Like, see this guy now. This is a guy with some character in his face, and she just kind of like goes off and starts talking to Anthony Hopkins, and Alec Baldwin goes up. He's kind of insulted her, but Alec Baldwin goes up to LQ and he's like, "Where's this guy at? I want to go take a picture of him." And he's like, "Bear Lake. It's like 80, or it's not Bear Lake, but it's like 80 miles from here." Yeah. He manages to get the pilot to take him in. Anthony Hopkins wasn't going to go, actually, but because of his unpleasant exchange with LQ, Alec Baldwin's like, "Hey, do you want to go with us?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's probably best." It's a little awkward right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're flying along, and the conversation between Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin is good. Do you want to mention it?
No, you take this.
Okay. Alec Baldwin talks about his money quite a bit, which if you ever meet somebody who's super rich, don't talk about their money. I feel like it's rude. It's very rude, because
when you meet someone with a glass eye, you probably shouldn't lead with that. I mean, honestly, like,
I will cross the T's and dot the lowercase J's.
There you go.
Got Wayne's World 2 in there.
Yeah.
But he's like, all that money, and he's like, he mentions something about what people value you for, and Anthony Hopkins who's I guess a little passive aggressive, but he's like, "What do you value me for, Bob?" And he's like, "I like your style, and I think your wife's pretty cute." And he's like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "So how are you planning to kill me?" And I think it was supposed to be, it was like 50-50, like a joke, but also Anthony Hopkins is like calling him out, like, "I can see past your bullshit, dude. I know that you're not sincere." And Alec Baldwin gives him a look like, "How the fuck did you know?" It's a weird, it's an uncomfortable exchange.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or maybe he's just so flabbergasted by, like, why would you say something like that? But my favorite line one of my favorite lines in the movie. Oh no, I'm sorry. We completely missed it. There
are two plane rides.
There are two plane rides. The first plane ride, they get to the Native American gentleman's cabin, and he's gone. He left a note on his front door.
Bear hunting.
Out bear hunting at this lake. And Alec Baldwin asked the pilot, "How far away is this?" He's like, "Another 20 miles. So they're going to be getting close to 100 miles away from where they're supposed to be, which is bananas. And Anthony Hopkins had read in the book about a deadfall. Deadfall is just a pit, probably about 5 or 6 feet deep. And it has a bunch of wooden spikes at the bottom to basically trap a bear. And Alec Baldwin comes up and he's like, and I was like, be careful of the deadfall. And he's like, "What's a deadfall?" And like foreshadowing.
Yeah, that's.
So they decide they're gonna. I like Alec Baldwin's relationship with Steven. I think it's the only person that he is actually sincere with, because he kind of like does a little grab assing with him. And this is where they get back in the plane, and he's like, "What do you value me for? How are you going to kill me?" And then all of a sudden, the pilot goes, "Oh, fuck, hold on."
Yep. The timing is pretty great.
It's so good. They run into a flock of geese, and it just destroys the plane.
Yeah, so this is a propeller-driven plane.
Yeah.
And when a large animal, like a goose, goes into the propeller, bad things can happen. So we get a couple of exploding geese. A couple of them go through the windshield, and severe engine trouble. They end up having to put the plane down in a lake. The crash sequence is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. There are only 2 or 3 effect shots in this entire movie that don't hold up. One of which is during the crash. We get a weird composite shot of the plane and the geese. It just looks weird.
Yeah.
It doesn't look bad. It just looks weird.
Luckily, it's quick, so you don't get much time to spend on it. But
the plane goes down into a lake, and again we get some character building moments here. I love this style of storytelling. It's all visual. Mm-hmm. A lot of looks exchanged, a lot of body language. So what I mean by this is when we're in the water with our characters, pilot dies on impact. Anthony Hopkins is shown like checking to see if he's alive. His eyes are wide open. He's not moving. I'm pretty sure he's dead. Alec Baldwin kicks out the window and goes straight for the surface.
See, it's actually Alec Baldwin who checks the pilot first. He's the one that checks the pilot, and then he just goes. He doesn't check his friend. He checks the pilot. He realizes the pilot's dead, then floats up, and then Anthony
but he doesn't pay any mind to Steven or Charles.
Nope.
He goes straight to the surface. Charles, on the other hand, immediately goes to Steven, who is trapped. I think he can't get his window open, or his seatbelt is stuck or something.
He's panicking. Yeah, he's not.
He can't get his window open, but Charles has enough in his mind going where he manages to secure a satchel of stuff, and he frees Steven, and then everybody gets to the surface. And I really loved when we first come out of the water.
Yeah.
So we get to the shore, and immediately we do CPR on Steven, who's got water in his lungs and is passed out. Fastest CPR in the world, by the way. Fastest, cleanest CPR in the world.
The shot where they're actually coming out of the lake, like you have Alec Baldwin at the surface, and you see in the distance that Anthony Hopkins comes up. I like the choice of the camera angle here. It's not very high up. It's actually like a very, very close shot on Alec Baldwin. I like these kind of water shots. It just seems a little more eerie to me.
Well, we also get the mountains and the trees in the background. It emphasizes the remoteness of their location, and it's eerie.
Yeah, very eerie.
And also the lake is entirely empty. Like there's no signs of life whatsoever. So we revive Steven, and then we get this panic moment where Alec Baldwin decides to fireman carry him deeper, like away from the water for no real reason, and then he collapses and he's like hyperventilating. But what I really liked about this scene is once everyone's mostly got their shit together and Steven's no longer in danger of dying or whatever, the cold, the shivering, and just the cold and the panic that's going through everyone except for Charles is palpable. Like Alec Baldwin is selling the shit
Shaking.
out of the. I mean, they just came out of the fucking water in the Alaska wilderness. They're freezing cold.
I think they legit did. I mean, they did come out of the lake, but I think they shot this shortly after being in the water because it looks pretty legit, him shaking.
Oh yeah, they're everybody's soaking wet, and they're like trying to light a match, and the close-ups on Alec Baldwin's hands trying to strike a match. It's like an epic struggle, and just the combination of them being covered in water and really good use of sound. We get like ambient wind noises, and it again emphasizes how alone they are.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh, it's just us in the cold right now.
Yeah, so so Anthony Hopkins, super genius. They're just trying to get a little fire going after they get Steven back to life, and he's trying to conserve their resources. So all they have is a couple of matches that were in Alec Baldwin's little cigar case, and he's using a little bit of kindling to get this going, and the wind got to it, and it's just not happening yet. So Alec Baldwin's like, let's stop fucking about, shall we? And he pulls out a flare. Now, that satchel that Anthony Hopkins grabbed has some flares in it. And he tries to reason with them, like, hey, we might need those. And they're just too cold. He's not having it. And he gets
in
the
that
fire
situation,
going.
I think it was the right move.
It was.
I mean, honestly.
But it also shows you the characters. Like, Anthony Hopkins is trying to be really smart about this and conserve their resources. Alec Baldwin's like, he's not understanding the predicament that they're in just yet.
Yeah. And I think after we get the fire going is we somehow get through the night without incident.
Yeah, they make it through.
it's kind of a funny cut because we see them at twilight with the fire going, and then it's morning. Everybody's dry and everybody's healthy. Okay. Then we get a moment where they're discussing their options. Like, okay, are people going to be looking for us? Where should we be when they're looking for us, if they're looking for us? And then the subject comes up about where they're supposed to be. And they say, oh, well, I mean, they'll go to the native guy's house because LQ knows him and they know where we went. And then they'll see the note, and they'll see that, oh, on that note it says went to Bear Lake to bear hunt. So they'll come to the conclusion that that's where we went, and then they'll come here and we'll be safe. Then Alec Baldwin just pauses and pulls the note out of his coat. It's like, why did you take the note, you dumbass?
I like Anthony Hopkins. I like his response. He goes, ah.
He's just like, yeah.
So he's like, looks like we're walking out of here.
And then I think this is when the needle trick comes into play. The one that you had mentioned when we did our very first recording about the movie Predators.
I'm assuming this is a survival technique. I believe this is probably legit. But they don't explain it at all in Predators, which is why I'm like, there was a couple of instances in that movie I'm like, you need to have seen The Edge, or whoever directed that had seen The Edge. Because that's the only other time I've seen it in a movie is here. They use the needle trick. It's going to face north, basically. You throw...
you take a metallic needle, you rub it on silk, and it magnetizes it, and you place it on a leaf, and it faces north.
Perfect. And again, your Charlie Sheen impression on Three Musketeers episode, just great. I
got a knack for Charles.
That was good. That was good, and that was a pretty good Anthony Hopkins as well. So, it works, and he's like, "All right, north is this. Go for it."
Important point here. So they're looking for a metallic needle. Anthony Hopkins says he would use his pocket watch. However, it's damaged and it's not working. and he asks Alec Baldwin, "May I see your watch, Bob?" And he says, "Oh," he doesn't even look at it. He just says, "Oh, mine's broken too."
He literally just he like glances at it real quick. He goes, "Mine's broken."
Yeah, he doesn't even pull his sleeve up. He just like lifts his arm briefly, and you can tell, you can see the mental math happening. Where he's like, "Oh, I shouldn't do that. It's broken." So I believe they use a paper clip instead.
But yeah, so it works, and they start walking.
The plan is to head south towards a peak.
Yeah, they're looking for the river, and they're like, I think that the river is south. We get to the river.
Alec Baldwin has this moment where he's holding a stick, and he's like holding his arms out, and he says, "That doesn't feel south, Charles."
Yeah. Like, it doesn't matter. It has to be. Yeah. So they go walking.
And they're bantering, and actually the atmosphere is pretty upbeat at this point. Like, they're having a good time in the woods.
I mean, you've still got enough like carbs and fat in your system you might be hungry, but you're going to be able to walk for a while. You've just survived a plane crash with maybe a few bruises. Like, I'd be feeling pretty good too. I'm feeling optimistic.
No, I mean, it's like I feel pretty invincible right now.
Yeah, I feel pretty good.
See things other people can't see, do things other people can't do.
So there's a bit of bantering, and Alec Baldwin actually asks Anthony Hopkins, he's like, "Is it just my imagination, or before we crashed, did you ask how was I planning to kill you?" And I don't remember what he says back to him, but he's just like, well, why not? Like, you like my wife and my money, and he's like, why not just kill me? And Alec Baldwin says, is like, if I wanted to kill you, I'd still need you to get out of here, you like dumbass, like you stupid son of a bitch. Like
that is what he says, but the first thing he says in response to Anthony Hopkins like saying, "Yes, that is what I said," Charles, baby. Hans, booby.
Yeah, Hans, booby. Yeah,
I'm your white knight.
It is, yeah. He is Ellis. He's Ellis. He's
basically Ellis.
He's a salesman. Yeah.
If only he had a coke habit.
Fuck you. That's my name. He probably does have a coke habit. He says doing lines off of hooker strippers' asses or models' asses.
He doesn't
or
have a coke habit, but he does indulge.
He does indulge. Yes. So I think we get a little bit of grab-assing between Alec Baldwin and Steven when we hear a roar. And
another good line in there. I didn't write down the whole thing, but
bare our feelings.
Latent homosexuality, other good stuff. We'll all get into a hot tub and talk about our feelings.
Bare our feelings. That was a pretty good.
Again, David Mamet.
A whole stew of money and latent homosexuality.
Yeah, he's he's like, what? Line. Where'd that come from?
Yeah, I'm like, what? But yeah, so
the bear announces itself.
The bear announces itself. Steven hears it, and they stop, and then he comes into frame, and he's got this lower lip. It's droopy lower lip, and Alec Baldwin and Steven just take off, and Anthony Hopkins hasn't moved, and he's just staring at him.
Does what LQ told him, actually. Yeah.
And he walks away slowly.
Like, stare at him, make sure he knows that you see him, and back away slowly.
Mm-hmm.
But then Alec Baldwin just gives the first of many come-ons!
Come on! And they're hauling ass through the woods, and they hear water. They hear a stream of some kind, and they get over there, and I think Anthony Hopkins is the one that notices that there's a tree that's down, and he rallies the gang, and they manage to get it to go across the water.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of elements in this story. This is an adventure film. That's what I would classify it as. It's not a survival film so much as it is an adventure film. I would call The Gray a survival film. That's about endurance. This is about adventure. So there's a massive distinction there in that things come together in this movie that wouldn't in a film like The Gray.
No.
So there's a lot of plot conveniences that you need to just wave off, and this is one of them where they build the fastest fulcrum ever devised.
Yeah.
Where the way they do this is, Anthony Hopkins sees like a tree that's it's like exactly the right length to bridge the gap between these rock outcroppings or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has Steven and Bob push this tree, and then Anthony Hopkins like slides an additional slightly smaller tree underneath it to create like a fulcrum to push it over. It's like, how the fuck did you come up with that? Which leads us to some pretty cool stunt work of them crossing this tree bridge.
Yeah, it looks like Steven did it.
I think he did. It looked legit.
He quickly, like, he just goes straight across.
Actually, everything about this scene looks genuine. Like, it looks legit. Very beautifully shot. Nice crane shot of him crossing the bridge. The only exception being Anthony Hopkins' stunt double.
Yes,
sticks out like a sore thumb.
Very much, yes.
And it looks like the SNL version of Sean Connery.
It does.
It does.
That is perfect. That's pretty good.
Yeah, he has a little mishap on the bridge where he's carrying the satchel with all the survival goodies in it, and Charles gets halfway across the bridge, but Bart the Bear he starts finagling the tree bridge and shaking it like a jackass, like he's doing a chicken fight on the school playground or something on the balance beam, and Charles takes a bad step. He slips and he's hanging from a branch on the tree, and he's got his legs in the river. It's not a good situation.
No.
He ends up losing the satchel and falling into the river.
Does he lose this? I don't think he loses the satchel. He does lose the satchel. You're absolutely right. He does.
Yeah.
And he falls in the river. The bear's like, he sees him hanging on the log, and the bear starts shaking it.
Yeah, like I say, he's doing the chicken fight thing where you stomp on the other end of the balance beam to fuck the other guy up.
and bears are pretty smart. I just read a fact that bears have been known to throw rocks into bear traps. Like they're
shit!
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So I would say the first time I watched this, I'm like, that bear's not going to do that. The bear might actually do that. They might be smart enough to actually know.
No, I had no issue with that, but holy shit. Bears throw rocks? I want to see a bear throw a rock.
Yeah. There's this really neat picture, if you can find it online. It is a bear that's lost its hair. And I have a theory that's where werewolf folklore kind of came from. Because if you see it, it looks like what a werewolf looks like. It's really terrifying.
See, I thought it was going to look like the bear from The Great Outdoors, the bald bear, the bald-headed bear with the baboon butt.
So bears can run much, much faster, nearly 3 times as fast as humans can.
Over short distances, yeah, absolutely.
However, I've read that bears have difficulty going downhill, which comes into play later.
It's one of the 2 or 3 bad effects in the movie.
I'm not positive about that, but I do believe that bears have trouble going downhill. But so yeah, they get away, but they're wet again, which I would be fucking furious if I got wet again at this point. Because I mean, getting wet sucks if you're in regular dry clothes, but in extremely cold water, I don't know if you've had that before, where you've been submerged.
Yeah,
it's terrible. It's one of the worst feelings.
It's again one of those things that has to be hand waved away in this movie, because there are a few instances of them getting wet again that should be like catastrophic. It'd be like, you are going to die from this.
Well, there's a couple of scenes where Anthony Hopkins gets in the water. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, he walks like ankle deep into the water. I was like, what the fuck are you doing?
Are you insane?
Do you know how precious your fucking socks are?
Yeah, seriously. So they get away, and they manage to. They're still walking.
Anthony Hopkins is extremely grateful to both of them, especially Bob, for there's repetition of him saying like, "You saved my life," and Alec Baldwin tries to like hand wave it away, and Charles emphasizes it. It's like, "No, you legit saved my life, and I'm thankful for it." And there's an interesting moment where there was a quote that got tossed out there. It's the reason why people die in the woods is shame.
They die of shame.
They die of shame. And after having lost the satchel, Anthony Hopkins for the first time in the movie. We see him muttering to himself about, "I lost the flare." It's like I can't abide that. That's terrible. And the other two guys are like, like, weren't you the one telling us that shame and self-doubt is what kills people out here? Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting character moment where it's like, he's starting to crack a little bit too. Mm-hmm. And it takes him a bit to let it go.
And then we get to the wah wah wah. So
it's a big one.
It's a big one. So they've burned a lot of calories walking. Fresh water. I mean, they managed to get some fresh water along the way. No food. They've been hiking all day, like shaking ass up a mountain walking. So they come to a lake, and wouldn't you know it, Anthony Hopkins looks down and he sees the flare that Bob lit up to get the fire going. They did a complete circle and just burnt. They went through getting chased by a bear, and then
they were chased by a bear, and I believe 2 nights have passed.
I believe, at least one night.
That's about a full day, like a full 24 hours of nothing.
Mm-hmm. And they get back, and they're like, "Oh man!" Anthony Hopkins looks at the paper clip, and he's just like, maybe it was the belt it was attracted to." And Alec Baldwin just takes the pin from him and just throws it. He's so mad.
Takes this tiny paper clip from him, throws it.
And Steven's character, we haven't really mentioned too much. He doesn't keep his composure very well.
He's very vocal in how he's feeling in the moment.
Alec Baldwin he breaks a little bit more. Anthony Hopkins has got a poker face the whole time. He's staying optimistic, and
Bob uses humor to deal with his shit. Like that's like his witticisms come out when he's tense. Mm-hmm. Like he can't help but be snappy when he's upset or tense. And whereas Steven, just if he's like, "What are we gonna do?" If that's what he's thinking, that's what he's saying.
He's freaking out.
Yeah.
And he starts having a freak out with Alec Baldwin, and Alec Baldwin's like, "Calm down." He pushes him, and Alec Baldwin just like, "I gotta step away. Like, this is getting out of hand." So Anthony Hopkins is like, "We're gonna get out of here." And he's like, "We don't have anything to eat." And he's like, "Here." He gives him a knife, and he's like, "Here, start making a spear." And he's like, "You want me to make a fucking spear?" Like, it's just, he's so angry. But it's smart. Anthony Hopkins, like, he needs to get his mind off of this. It'll give him something to do. He's freaking out, so let him make a spear. And Alec Baldwin goes over to talk to Anthony Hopkins, and they're chatting back and forth. And Steven is careless with the knife and slices his leg.
Yeah, how the fuck did he do that?
I think what he was doing is he's sitting down like on his knees, and I think he was whittling, so he was scraping this way and sliced his leg open. Like,
how do you fuck that up?
I don't think it was a puncture. I think he actually sliced it.
It was
open.
a slice, but
yeah.
To quote William Hurt, how do you fuck that up?
Well, in his defense, he was very upset. You got to think, like, ever been like close to a car wreck or something like that, where you're like adrenaline is pumping and you're freaked out and you're kind of hazy a little bit. You're not quite tethered to reality, and I think this is where he's at. So he's not really paying attention to what he's doing. And
what's ironic about it is that the whole reason why Anthony Hopkins gave him the knife and told him to make the spear is just to give him something to do.
Yeah,
just something tangible to focus on, as opposed to the existential dread of being lost in the woods.
Yeah.
And good job.
They are dressing the wound. Steven has stabbed himself in the leg, and it's bad. Like, it's a pretty bad cut. Did you notice how thin his pants were?
Yeah, I did.
Insanely. And I can't tell what kind of pants Alec Baldwin's wearing. They almost look like sweatpants.
Yeah, they're kind of poofy like that. But I think, I mean, it's a small detail, but I'm guessing the reason Steven's pants were like that is so they could tear it on screen.
Yeah.
Easily.
But I just know growing up in like Indiana in the winter time, having like really thin layers like that, like, just kind of made me like, oh god, that sucks, because I'm sure he's freezing out there.
Yeah.
If you don't have long johns on underneath there, geez. But yeah, so
he did not.
So Charles, like, he's very good at keeping composure in moments like this, because it's like, am I gonna lose my leg? He's like, it's all right, it's gonna be fine. And they dress his wound, and there's a really bloody piece of cloth, and Alec Baldwin or Anthony Hopkins tells Bob to, hey, go bury this, and Alec Baldwin runs off, and they come back to, and what's his face? Steven's sleeping, and he's talking to Alec Baldwin, and Anthony Hopkins are talking. Alec Baldwin's having a cigar. He smokes, by the way. That also elevates that's another element that like can aggravate somebody in a situation like this, not having nicotine as well.
Yeah.
But he's smoking, and he's like, is he gonna be okay? He's like, yeah, he's gonna be fine. He's like, are we actually gonna get out of here? And he's like, oh yeah, we're gonna get out of here. And they build a fire. They got the fire going, and Anthony Hopkins is tending to his wound again, and he's having a nice conversation with Steven. Steven's kind of calmed down. He's lost a lot of blood, so he's calmed down. And he's just like, are we gonna get out of here? And he's like, yeah. He's like, how? And he shows him the constellation. He's like, okay, so you see this star? And like, this is south, so we're gonna go this way.
Yeah, Cassiopeia. It's a big W.
Mm-hmm.
He points out which one's the North Star, and that one means north. So now we know our directions. Yeah, we don't need to rely on potentially false needle tricks.
Yes. So all is well, and the weather kicks in.
Yeah, the note I have, my God, the fucking rain.
Oh.
And right underneath that, though, and how the fuck is the fire still going?
Yeah, no kidding. So they've made like a little shelter out of, I forget what this tree is, but it is very good. At my apartment in Seattle, there was one of these trees, like on the side of the building, where a guy who lived in the building next door would come out and smoke because, as you know, in Seattle, it rains quite a bit in the wintertime. And
yes, it does.
The rain could not get through this tree, and that's the kind of branches that they have.
Well, their tree isn't as good as yours then, because yeah, these guys are soaked and they're miserable.
Yeah, and Anthony Hopkins, they're like, are we actually gonna get out of here? They've asked for the 10th fucking time, and Anthony Hopkins goes out and he's like, yes, we know that this way is north, and that's and he sees on the branch. Alec Baldwin did not bury the bloody rag. He just hung it on a limb. And
that is a massive fuck up.
Yeah. And he's like, I told you to bury those. And this is from childhood, this is one of the scariest things I've ever seen. This is this whole sequence. Do you want to take it?
Sure. So while Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin are talking in the rain, what prompts the conversation actually is Alec Baldwin notices that Steven is like huddled against a rock and basically just shivering and in agony.
Yeah.
And he's asking Anthony Hopkins, like, is he gonna be okay? And Anthony Hopkins like assures him, yeah, it's not that bad a wound. He's just cold. It'll be all right. And I think he's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, what Steven sees through the bushes, and the way the first shot we get of this is beautiful, where it's hazy. I wear glasses.
Mm-hmm.
So when it rains, I get condensation on my lenses, and it makes it very difficult to see. If you've ever seen Jurassic Park, Dennis Nedry, his glasses, that's what it's like. And the lensing on this shot is it's hazy. There's like condensation on the lens, and it's from Steven's perspective, and you see this bear, but
you just see his breath.
It's obscured by branches, and yes, you see its breath on the air in this rainstorm, and it takes him a second to realize what he's looking at, but the instant he does, I think he gives an audible "oh shit."
Yeah. So actually, the lighting through this is really good.
It's very blue.
It's blue, but it's lit by campfire and lightning.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And the way they use Dutch angles to make the bear more menacing, very effective.
Yes, this is terrifying. So
this is the best bear acting I've ever seen.
It's really like The Revenant.
That's not real bear acting.
Exactly.
That's a man in a gray suit.
That's what makes this so good. Is like you do get like a comical, like him picking him up and throwing a dummy, but he gets a hold of his leg, and Steven lets out this scream, and he's got like blood on his face, and it's chilling.
Actually, what I wrote here on my notes, and it's an excellent scene. All the bear scenes in this movie are excellent.
Really good.
Again, best bear acting, best bear action on film, as far as I know.
Yeah.
But there's a detail that I think would have made it even better. I think it's noted that bears have a habit of, like, panthers and cougars and lions and tigers, like
Toying with the food.
Most predators go for the jugular.
Mm-hmm.
It's common amongst predators. They kill their prey, they take it down, and it, if you get the right spot and yank it right, it's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Bears apparently have a habit of eating things alive. Like, they don't care if you're still alive when they're eating you. They're like velociraptors. The point is, you're still alive when they eat you.
Try to show a little respect.
Steven stops screaming before. So Anthony Hopkins and Alec Baldwin both actually try to intervene, and we get this nice moment where Bart the Bear stands up, and he's quite tall, and he bellows right in Anthony Hopkins' face, and he falls over because naturally that's what you do when a giant bear roars in your face. And it's pretty obvious that they're not armed, they're not ready for this, they have no way of stopping what's happening. So the two of them take off, and Anthony Hopkins, he shows like human emotion a couple of times in this movie. First instance I can recall is when he falls into the river earlier in the movie. When he falls, he genuinely looks terrified.
Yeah.
And when this bear is roaring at him, and he's coming to the realization that Steve is dead, Steve is going to die, and he can't do anything about it. He gives this look, and he's got this flaming log that he just kind of like limply tosses, and he's just like, Steve.
Because he's like over Steven, and he's screaming, and then we get the... Yeah.
Yeah, and when... I think it would have been even more effective if Steven was still screaming when they had to leave. But they cut it off before they leave. Like, Steven is well and truly dead before they leave.
It's heavy.
It's extremely heavy either way, and it's an excellent scene. Really worth seeing, even if you don't see the whole movie.
It scared the shit out of me as a kid. Like it's
oh, I'm sure. I think I was just old enough that I was going cool.
And this, I like this scene that comes up next. We cut to we're zooming in, and it's a light snow. It's sticking, but it's a light snow. And you have Anthony Hopkins and Charles and Bob. They're just sitting on a
Chuck
rock.
and Bob.
They're just sitting on a rock, and I think it's probably like not quite early morning, but like 9 or 10 in the morning, and they're just dead still, just sitting there. And they're like, I just like, are they figuring out what to do? Like, they've gone through a plane crash, and they've just watched their friend get eaten alive by a bear. So, and it's just cold, and like, we're not walking today. Like, we're gonna take that day.
We're gonna take 5.
We're gonna take 5. But they kind of start. I think they kind of start walking a little bit, and Anthony Hopkins is like, we're not gonna make it unless we get something to eat. And this Alec Baldwin is kind of talking to him like, what are we gonna do? Like, he's having that moment, and Anthony Hopkins goes, I'm working on that, and he's made a squirrel trap, and
a gorgeous squirrel trap, by the way.
It's
like expert craftsman kind of shit.
And
it's a basket.
Yeah, it's a squirrel basket. I just rewatched The Revenant a few weeks ago because I own it, and I'm like, you know what, I'm in the mood to watch it. It's on my Amazon, and my favorite dialogue scene in that movie is when Tom Hardy's character is talking to the young kid, and he talks about the guy in the wilderness seeing God. And he's like, it was a squirrel. He's like, I ate that son bitch. But I don't know. I just love that. I love that scene. I love that.
It's the first 4K disc I ever bought.
That's well worth it.
Exactly.
But yeah, so they catch the squirrel, and they are ecstatic. Like, they are so happy.
I love their faces when they're like getting ready to rig the trap. They're just like,
yeah,
because they're like huddled right next to each other, and you can tell like they're invested.
Well, they're pretty close to it too.
Yeah, and they give each other a white guy high five right after catching the squirrel. But then a chopper goes by overhead.
Yeah, and I've never been lost in the wilderness, but I'm pretty sure that's the greatest sound you could hear.
Oh yeah, no, and instantly Alec Baldwin I think he gives another "Come on!"
I would be hauling ass too.
Oh yeah.
Like, this is the last chopper out of Saigon. This thing's like fucking Saigon, hey Slick.
I was in junior high, dickhead.
So they're running. Anthony Hopkins is trailing quite a bit, and we get into a big open field, and they are just too late.
Yeah, Chopper's long gone.
Yeah.
Good luck doubling back to get to that squirrel, by the way. Like, good luck finding your way back to it.
Yeah. And then Alec Baldwin just, like, he falls down exhausted. Like, he's panting, and he's just defeated. And Anthony Hopkins is picking up on it, and I don't know if he's just socially awkward, or I think he's just socially awkward. He doesn't understand timing, and this is another moment where Bob is furious, and Charles just goes, "Did you know you can make fire out of ice?" It's so funny. And just Alec Baldwin he's at his wit's end. He just fucking loses it. He's like, "You fucking make me sick." He's like, basically saying that he's a pompous rich person. He's like, nothing ever bothers you, but he's like, get you in an emergency situation and you blossom. You just bloom. You're doing fantastic.
This is the whole masculinity issue coming to the surface, where it's like he's intensely threatened by Charles, because this is a guy who already is like one of the he's a billionaire in the 90s. He's one of the richest people on the planet. Yeah, a billionaire.
Yeah.
Being the richest man on the planet and a capable survivalist, that's just too much for one person to handle. This is Lex Luthor meeting Superman.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Lex Luthor can't abide by Superman, because Superman, just by being, outclasses him, despite Lex Luthor having wealth, looks, power, everything you can imagine, but just by being, this other person tops him. In Alec Baldwin's case, it's like, not only are you rich, you're also the only one of the two of us out here who somehow has his shit together and knows what to do. It's like, how like, how can you have all of this?
Because Anthony Hopkins is much smarter, but he also, I think he's a harder worker. Like, he has a better work ethic, because you don't get $1 billion by being lazy. And I don't think that Alec Baldwin has ever had to try anything. He's never had to try for anything in his life. Like, he's just banging a model on the side, and he's a successful photographer.
No, he's getting by in a world that allows him to.
Yeah.
Because if he had been born, several thousand years earlier, he probably would have died. No, really. I mean, it's like me having deficient eyes. Like, my genes probably would have died out a long time ago if I'd been born at a different time.
You're like, I'm gonna go look into that gold rush over there on the West Coast. Like, you can't sling guns, dude. You can't see.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, that quote, "Did you know that you can make fire from ice?" is one of the more memorable ones in the movie, and I think he is not very good when it comes to social cues, but I think it's him calling back to giving Steven the spear making task. Mm-hmm. It's like, if I give this guy a riddle, maybe he'll fixate on that instead of his dilemma. While Alec Baldwin is throwing this shit fit, one of the quotes I wrote down was, "What puts you off? Jews and taxes." Yes, I was like, oh my god, where the fuck did that come from?
He was sitting on that one for a while.
Yeah, he was sitting on that one for a while.
But this is a really good scene, and I think Alec Baldwin is good in it. He's having a tough time, and finally he's having he's needed this. He's needed a cry. Like, he's having his
he
cry
does cry
finally
in the scene. He's got this runny nose and everything. Like, he sells the fuck out of this scene. And
it's good.
Actually, I think maybe the best quote in this whole sequence, in terms of character building, though, came from Anthony Hopkins, and it's kind of weird how, like, they don't make a big deal of it, but Alec Baldwin challenges him and says, like, "Are you dense or something?" And Charles responds with, "No, I'm not dense. I just have no imagination.
I have no imagination, yeah.
And I thought that was very telling, because that speaks to his character. It's like he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who daydreams or fixates on the kind of things that most people do in the modern world. It's like, if he's presented with a problem, instead of thinking about, the minutia and like all the variables, he just focuses on the problem and how to solve it.
Well, he even mentions later, once he has an issue with Bob, he's like, well, why are you helping me? He's like, challenge, I guess. And yeah, he really does face a lot of the obstacles in this movie as challenges, and that's what keeps him going. But yeah, after he explains, he's like, okay, how do you get fire from ice? And he tells him how to do it, and Alec Baldwin just gets like that last little bit out, like he cries a little bit more, and finally they're on the move again.
The answer, by the way, is you crush the ice into a lens to create a light beam to create fire.
So this is where I believe they go fishing. This is where they get to like a little stream or something, and he's like, we'll go fishing. He's like, well, what are we going to use for bait or tackle? Like, what are we going to use? And he grabs a piece of gold. Like, he grabs his gold watch. He's like, yeah, we'll just use this. So we have I love clear, like the clear water shots. And there's I just drove through Yosemite this summer. That drive is just a clear creek along the whole way, and there's a lot of it in Washington. A lot of just really beautiful scenery, but this is just really gorgeous. And again, he's got his socks wet. He's fishing in this stream, and it's I don't know how the bear did it, but he's just sitting there, and he looks up, and the bear is just staring at him. I'm like, that was some sneaky shit.
Stealth bear.
And Anthony Hopkins he does the same thing. He looks at him right in the eye and just walks back slowly, and then he takes off running. And while he's running, the bear is just like running through, and the bear's knocking through some branches. Now,
this is one of the not so good effects in the movie.
Yeah. He's just crushing these branches, and they're pretty like young trees.
Well, they're CGI trees.
But he gets back to Bob, and they have a fire going, and Bob's just kind of leaned up against the tree, and he's like, Bob, he's a man killer.
Bob, he's a man killer. He's been following us the whole time.
So this is kind of this is a dumb scene. I don't really care for this scene that much, but they start taking the flaming branches, and they create a fire circle around them.
Again, how are these fires continuing to burn? You have to toss that out the window, like in terms of logic, but it is a question. It's like, fire doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that unless you've lined like a ring of kindling and you've already got like sticks set up there. The bear does seem to be afraid of fire a little bit, and I'm assuming that's what he's doing. So they have to spend the night in the middle of this fire circle, awake the whole time, with a bear growling at different spots, assuming he's just trying to find a way in.
So the thing about man killer, LQ actually used the term earlier in the film, and he says that once a bear gets a taste of a man and becomes a man killer, he'll do pretty much anything to get another taste of it.
Yeah.
So the point that we're trying to drive home here is that this bear is fixated on the two of them and is not going to let them go.
No.
So this bear is waiting them out at this point, and the bear has quite a lot more fat stores in it than these two guys.
Yeah. So the next morning, they go around, and I like this sequence. The bears left for some reason. It didn't wait for the duck.
By the way, this is where they resolve to kill the bear.
Yes, they're going around picking up the spears. They're picking up branches, and we get Anthony Hopkins. He's just talking to Bob about stuff. You can tell that they've been up all night. They haven't had any food yet. They still haven't eaten that we've seen. So I'm assuming they haven't eaten. They're exhausted, and Anthony Hopkins is a bit frantic right now. Like he's a bit.
He's kind of loopy.
I've felt like this before, where you're just like, you have energy, but you're like exhausted. You can even see it in his eyes when he says his awesome quote here in a minute. You can tell that he looks like he's been up for a couple of days, and he's giving Bob a pep talk. He's like, we're going to kill the bear. He's like, we're not going to kill the bear. Yes, we are.
Yeah, we're going to lure him. He's like, how are we going to lure him? He cuts his own thumb and he says, blood!
Yeah, it's really good.
Say it, Bob. I'm going to kill the bear.
And he shows him how to do it. He said, he looks at that matchbox. He's like, if you take a very long spear, sharpen it, and you set it into the rock, you let when the bear comes down to attack you, you let its body weight impale it onto the spear, and that's the plan. And we have a long back and forth. He's amped him up, and I feel like
what one man can do, another can do.
Yeah, it is pretty good. Like, he gets him going.
Yeah, you're goddamn right. Because today I'm gonna kill the motherfucker.
It's really it's a good motherfucker. One of my favorite motherfuckers in a movie. So. How do they get? Okay, so yeah, what they do is they put the bloody handkerchief on the end of the spear, and they're hunting basically. They've just got the smell of blood in the air, and here comes Bart. It just comes up. So what we don't know is that they've hooked up. What do you call this thing? It's in Predators.
Kinda, yeah.
It's basically a big rock with spikes on it that's supposed to stab, like, to get the bear, and they're slowly backing up to get him onto a spot, and a little premature here, as you'll see. He's like, now, and he hits this thing. The thing swings by and just misses the bear, and it loses.
So it appears to be a stone. So it's like a stone wrapped in spears.
Yeah.
So it's a spiked stone hanging from a rope that swings through this clearing, and like you said, it misses. This trap is a little too elaborate given the resources.
Yeah,
like, where's all this rope and twine and shit coming from?
Yeah, and
how the fuck did they get a heavy stone up in the air like that?
Yeah,
I mean, again, you have to throw it out the window, but yeah, the trap goes right in front of Bart's face, and he just kind of like gives a look like,
yeah, and then
it's kind of cool, though, because it is swinging, so of course it has to come back.
But
at one point it does, like, whack him in the side, and he lets out a little yelp. It doesn't look like it pierces the skin, though.
No.
So things aren't going well.
No.
So they take a fucking dive off into a creek bed. Like, it's a tall dirt hill.
Yeah, and this is where the bear's not being able to go down a hill very fast is where it comes in play, because he's like, it's
I'm
adorable.
glad you noticed that.
It's really cute because he's just like, I don't know
I'm
how
sure
to do it.
He looked like he was getting ready to do a polar bear slide.
Exactly, that's what it looks like.
And he looked like he was about to have a great time.
He slides down, and it's adorable. He's just we're gonna slide
and
down.
It does actually look like Gary Oldman climbing that wall in Dracula. It's awkwardly sped up.
It does, yeah. They do speed it up a little bit, but it gives them some time, and now they're down in the creek with their socks wet again. But the reasoning is, I think, because this is the only spot with stone, like rocks big enough that can brace the spear. I don't think there was any spots in the forest where it would.
Either that, or they just had to retreat. And
they have a bunch of spears down there. They've got like 5 or 6 of them ready to go.
Yeah, they do actually. No, good point. They do have them rigged up.
So now we've get, like, Bart's not having this. Like, the bear is really good at like blocking the spears. You would think this would be like, I've got a spear. It's gonna be no problem. He's got to shove it in his mouth. Like, no, he's a killer. Like, he's pretty good. He's agile. You're not just gonna get him. We get some slapping. There's one slap in here that the bear does that is just hysterical. I think it's the Alec Baldwin slap where he just like bam, but you see the bear do the move from behind. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was terrible.
And he goes flying. But
yeah.
The note I wrote here about the creek bed is a creek bed battle is amazing. Mm-hmm. Again, seeing the bear on screen is just incredible, even though you can often tell that it's acting with stuntmen wielding green fun noodles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are moments where I'm like, there's not even spears. It is done really
There's
well.
no point to to the spears that they're oftentimes handling.
And
for the safety of the bear, more than likely.
I have my dog, my older dog, the border collie. Whenever she has too much energy and we get her going, like messing with her, and like she has her mouth open, she's trying to like get you. That's what Bart's kind of doing in this with the sticks. It's really cute the way he's doing it. But Anthony Hopkins has got him, so he's lured him back, and Anthony Hopkins is headed towards some stones, and he rears back. He gets the spear in place, and woof, the bear comes down and dies pretty much instantly. But
gets impaled and dies.
He lands right on Anthony Hopkins, and Alec Baldwin walks over, and it looks as though Anthony Hopkins is dead because he's just laying there with his eyes wide open, and Alec Baldwin has this moment where he thinks he's dead, and I don't know what could be going through his head at that moment. Like, this is the guy that has gotten him this far and is the one that's going to get him all the way out. So I think there's a moment of like, this is kind of what I wanted, but at the same time I'm doomed. So fuck. But Anthony Hopkins comes too, and this is kind of funny. Like, they just lay there for a minute, like not even excited. They just lay against the bear, like kind of in shock almost. Like, I can't believe we just fucking did that shit.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like surviving the plane crash. It's kind of like a feel kind of invincible now moment. And now they have bear meat and bear armor.
Yeah. Bear armor.
Seriously, bear armor. Seriously, where is all this twine and like sewing kits coming from?
This has got to be pretty great because they've got meat. They're like, we finally killed this fucking bear. And generally in a movie like this where the bear is chasing you, it would be like the climax of the film. But this isn't actually. This is a speed bump. But they managed to like dress the bear. They got this pelt ready to go. They probably stayed the night there, like stayed the night, then stayed the next day, ate some more, let the pelts dry up, and now they're on the move again. And it is fucking winter. Like, it is snowing outside.
Snowing everywhere.
Yeah. And they're walking along the river, some kind of creek, and then they come to a hunting lodge, basically, but it's just like a single cabin hunting lodge up on stilts, and it looks awesome. It looks great.
Yeah, awesome set.
And I would have to imagine for them, like, that's got to be one of the greatest feelings in the world. Like, after you've killed a bear, like, plane crash, friend's dead, killed a bear, now we have shelter. Just having shelter would be tremendous. I sound like Joey Diaz. It's tremendous.
It's tremendous.
Tremendous. Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan. It's tremendous.
Tremendous. So yeah, they get in, and Anthony Hopkins notices that there is a deadfall, and Alec Baldwin still he didn't grasp it when they mentioned it. He's like, it's a deadfall. He's like, what's the thing to trap bears? So anyway, they get inside, and Alec Baldwin notices a coat. I thought that this was odd, that there's inside this cabin, it's pretty much it's abandoned, nobody's there, and as Anthony Hopkins says, it hasn't been used in quite some time because it's pretty dusty, and there's this jacket. Did you notice the jacket that's hanging?
Yeah, it looks a lot more modern than the other equipment in there.
Yeah,
like the rifle is a Winchester, late 1800s. I mean, it's still produced to this day, but like the stove and the kettle looks very old-fashioned. The matchbook, the medical kit.
But I just thought it was odd that Bob's character, so he didn't really kill the bear. Like, he helped, but it was Anthony Hopkins. So even more so, Anthony Hopkins has now bested him in something I'd say at the epitome of masculinity. He's killed a bear. Yeah. So I think this is a moment where Alec Baldwin, he takes off the bear pelt, and he puts on just a modern jacket. And I think that might be that shame coming in a little bit, like the kind of feels emasculated by the whole situation.
I didn't earn this.
I didn't earn this, so he kind of takes it off and puts on something else.
That's a good concept. I hadn't thought of that.
He ends up he finds the dude's whiskey immediately. He
goes right for it.
He grabs the gun immediately, and he's just like, what we need to do? Find out if that boat floats, if that canoe really floats. he's smoking. He's like, "You're gonna take the other guy's supplies?" Like, he's like, "You probably shouldn't do that." And he's like, "I'll write him a check. I'll write him a check." He says it 2 times.
Yeah.
But Anthony Hopkins is like, they go down, check the canoe, it floats. Alec Baldwin's happy. They're both happy, and Anthony Hopkins, tea? I'm like,
Yeah.
that would probably be the best cup of tea you've ever had. Like,
Absolutely.
at that point, it would just be delicious. But come to find out, things aren't gonna go as well. So
Yeah.
you wanna take it here?
Yeah, so the other shoe drops. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
So Alec Baldwin, we get a shot of him alone sitting with the canoe. He has the rifle in hand, and he's smoking.
Mm-hmm.
This man is smoking. Clearly something devious is going through his mind. And he gives a look that tells us something bad's about to happen. Anthony Hopkins, meanwhile, is trying to put on a pot of tea,
Mm-hmm.
and he's trying to look for something to start a fire because there's a stove with
Mm-hmm.
it's a wood stove. It's like made of iron or something, and he's looking for something to get the fire going because all there is just dry wood in there, and he's looking for like paper or like a flint or just something to get it going, and he can't find anything, so he pulls out the case, the pocket watch that was given to him by his wife on his birthday. He pulls out the case for that, and there's a slip of paper in there that we saw when he initially opened the case at the beginning of the movie. It says like warranty.
Mm-hmm.
And he pulls that out, and he's like, whatever, it's paper, I'm going to burn it. But then there's another piece of paper in there, and it's a receipt. And on the receipt, it has a list of 3 items. There's a knife, a pocket watch with an engraving, and the actual contents of said engraving are written on the receipt and says, like, to my loving husband, you're the best in the world, whatever. And then there's an additional line that says wristwatch with engraving, to Bob, from Mickey, for all the nights. And
Okay, so
late night stooping confirmed.
if you are married to a billionaire, man or woman, doesn't matter, and you've got a nice side piece that you've been working on for a while, like, you know what, I've been running through this person night after night, I'm going to get them an incriminating gift. Because if Anthony Hopkins wants a divorce, and she's like, I want half your shit, actually, I have proof that you've been stooping this other guy, which would pretty much get you nothing if you could prove that. So yeah, that's pretty dumb on her part.
A little bit.
But yeah, Alec Baldwin is just sitting there, and he's
he
smoking.
comes back in the cabin.
He's like, if I'd had my camera out here, I would have made my fortune. Made my fortune. Which I'm like, how? There's National Geographic photographers. They've been doing this shit for decades. Like, what would you have gotten?
Bart the Bear is a fucking celebrity. You think he doesn't have a fan page or something? Like,
I mean, it's 1997. The internet barely existed, but it was there.
Could I see your watch, Bob?
Yeah.
Charles asks Bob, "Can I see your watch?" And Alec Baldwin keeps dodging the question. He keeps dodging it, but eventually he eventually gets sussed out that I know what you know, I know what you know what I know, and he says a lot of bullshit here. Like everything he says in the next like 5 minutes is just bullshit.
Yeah,
it's all just like flimsy attempts to justify his actions. And at one point he even says, like, you had no business with that broad anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, what? What the fuck?
Yeah. It's not even like he's in love with her or anything. He's just like...
He just can't tolerate the idea of this guy being able to have as much as he has.
He doesn't think he deserves it. He thinks... Alec Baldwin's... He thinks that he should be the one that's more successful because...
I don't even think it's him feeling that he's entitled to more. I think it's just he's threatened by the idea of other people having more.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just the idea of conceiving of another human being having that much entitlement and being that good of a person on top of it is just too much for him to bear.
But if you think about the position that he's in, he's about to, if he kills Charles, he's about to survive. Like he knows how to get back now. He's just like, it's just a matter of
follow the river. It's fine.
And he's in a good position to be right there. Like it's right there for him to take.
This is like the ultimate win, I guess, in his mind anyway.
But he's not going to get any money unless he's able to lock down Mickey. I think it's her. Is that it? I think it's Mickey. Is her name.
Again, I don't think it's a matter of him wanting what he has. It's more he just can't abide the idea of someone else having.
Gotcha.
It's not that he wants to take it from him. It's just he doesn't like the idea of someone else winning, someone else being better.
I just looked at something. Charles Morse, not Morris.
Yeah,
Morse. Elle McPherson's name in the movie is Mickey Morse.
Mickey Morse.
I'm not kidding. It is one letter from Mickey Mouse.
That's adorable.
I did not know that. So yeah, Alec Baldwin's like, let's go outside, Charles.
Yeah, bear in mind he has the rifle.
He has the rifle. He's like, what, you can't do it inside, Bob. They go out, and Anthony Hopkins pretty much leads the way, and Alec Baldwin, you can just tell, is a mess. Like, even after having the whiskey, like, he's still, like, he wants to do this, but he can't. And Anthony Hopkins leads the way, and he walks pretty much right past the deadfall. So now they're having an exchange back and forth, and he's like, you don't have to do this. He's like, fucking yes, I do. He's like, turn around. And he's like, what? You can't just do it face to face? And he's like, you're not going to turn around? And he's just like, he starts kind of inching towards Alec Baldwin, just ever so slightly, because he knows that he doesn't want to. He's not going to shoot him. Like, he's having a lot of trouble with this. And
well, I mean, Alec Baldwin even says, "You would have died out here if not for me."
Yeah, that's weird.
That is a weird thing to say.
Yeah, I think he was getting his story. I think he was getting. You would have died out here if it wasn't for me. He's like, I carried him as far as I could. I think he's trying to get. He's trying to convince himself that he's doing the right thing. Or but he's like, Bob, and once you know it, Alec Baldwin falls back right into the deadfall, and this is the Hannibal Lecter moment where he's just like, be careful of the deadfall. Like, he wasn't going to say that. He was not going to say that. But, yeah. This is a good scene, and I shouldn't laugh at it, but I had a kind of a chuckle at it. We come over to the deadfall, and Alec Baldwin is like, just in a lot of pain. He's like, Charles, I think I broke my leg. And then we pan down, and there's a spike. It looks like it's right through his knee. Like, it doesn't even look like the thigh. It's like through the knee.
Yeah. It's pretty gruesome.
I think I broke my leg.
So it's like, yeah, Bob, I think you did too.
But it's done well, because if you were to like fall down and have your leg impaled by a spike and then hit your head, you'd be like kind of out of it too. Like, I think I broke my leg.
Yeah.
But
he's in shock. And what's interesting about this scene is that I actually wrote a lesser film would have had Hopkins leave him in the hole.
Yeah, but like
a lesser film would have had him just get in the boat and leave, because the audience would be, it's not uncommon for like an audience to be like, yeah, he got what's coming to him because he's an asshole. It's like, but he's also a person,
They could have taken an opportunity to just have him like Alec Baldwin like down there and just hear like a like hear another.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the classic Hollywood end for a bad guy character or something.
But he goes down there and he grabs the gun, and it looks like he's gonna shoot him, which would have been 100% warranted at this point. Like, you could absolutely shoot him, no problem.
Yeah. No, again, the audience would probably be fine with that.
And he just pumps the round right out of it, and he somehow manages to get him out.
How did he get him out?
I don't know.
Baldwin's not a small guy.
No, he weighs a good 210, 215, I'd say. Like,
he's a big guy.
He's a big guy. But he gets him.
That was a pretty deep hole too.
This might be one of the best Alec Baldwin performances, because he gets him onto the table inside, and I like how he's just like, oh, Charles, I'm not feeling so good, Charles. Yeah. Charles, I just do not feel good at all. Like, he's just yammering on, and Anthony Hopkins saw that when he was looking for kindling, he saw that medical book, and he goes into the medical book, and he gives Alec Baldwin a little bit of whiskey just to drink, and I think he puts him on the wound, and he's like, Alec Baldwin's just sitting there yammering. And
he puts a tourniquet on with a belt, and then he loosens it, because, you got to every once in a while, but Alec Baldwin remarks like, oh, I guess I don't have too much of that left.
Yeah. He tries to loosen the tourniquet, like he tries to loosen it, and the blood squirts out. So he's like, maybe not that.
Maybe not right now.
He's like, I guess there's only so much of that stuff.
But yeah, we cut away from that scene though with Charles just reading a book.
Well, he needs to put pressure on it, and he needs Alec Baldwin's help. He's like, here, sit up. I need you to help put pressure on it. And he starts to scream, and then he puts pressure on it, and he just writhing in pain. And he passes out.
Do it. Yeah.
He passes out from the pain. So, yes, we do cut to Anthony Hopkins just reading the book, like just trying to figure out what to do.
Again, no imagination. It's like...
So yeah, now some little bit of time's passed. He wakes up Bob. He's like, we're gonna get you out of here. So he gets him into the canoe, and he's got them all bundled up, and it's just Anthony Hopkins, beautiful scenery through here, just paddling through, and they have some exchanges in the canoe, and Alec Baldwin's like, I'm not feeling so hot. He's like, we'll get you to shore, get a fire going, and Bob's not feeling so good at this point. And
he's only told us about 20 times at this point.
He says something to Anthony Hopkins. He's like, "Oh, you wouldn't have done it," and I don't think he would have done it either. He was too stressed out. Like he didn't want to do it. But he's like, "You wouldn't have killed me." And Alec Baldwin says, "Yes, I would have. You stupid son of a bitch." It's just such a good line. Because he's kind of mad cause he doesn't have a lot of energy, but he's aggressive when he says it. Stupid son of a bitch. But they have a nice moment here, and Alec Baldwin's just like, I'm sorry, for everything.
The angle that he gets his moment from is very interesting, because it's like Bob is laying down with his head braced against a rock, and Charles is all too aware that Bob is fading fast. Like they grasp each other's hands, and Bob is just like rattling off every important thing that he can think of, one of which is what I mentioned earlier. He actually remarks like I think I'm gonna die, and I haven't done a damn thing. And most important thing that he wants to tell Charles though is like, I'm sorry. Like I'm very, 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 very sorry for everything.
He also tells him that his wife wasn't a part of him, killing.
Yeah. The wife wasn't in on the conspiracy to off him.
No.
And then we get a don't die on me. Don't die on me, Bob.
He's like, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah, that was a good follow up. But the don't die on me that's a classic. I think the worst example I can think of is Punisher Warzone.
Oh God.
When the Puerto Rican guy is dying in the subway or whatever.
Yeah,
don't really die on me. It's like you don't even know him. In fact, your only other interaction with him was you being suspicious of him.
Yeah, very suspicious. Oh.
And then we get our second helicopter.
Yeah, this was good. Now, in my backpacking backpack, it even says on the inside, if you're in distress, like if you're out in the wilderness lost, if you want a helicopter to come down, you do a big Y. You don't wave, because if you wave,
mentioned that when we were talking about the thing.
Uh-oh.
I can see you.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. Yeah. When did I mention it?
You mentioned it when we were talking about the thing, because Mary Elizabeth Winstead was doing the arm waves when she was trying to get Joel Edgerton to come back down.
But at this point, in this instance, they're looking for him. So he hears the helicopter, and he starts waving his jacket around. Hey, they can't hear you, just wave.
Well, it's funny, actually. I thought maybe it would have been a good idea to fire the rifle. Probably wouldn't help, being as they're in a helicopter, and just the sound of the rotor would probably be too much for them to hear anything. But shoot at them.
Yeah, somebody's shooting at us.
What the
fuck? I like what he does though, because it's very smart. He grabs something green to throw into the fire to get the smoke going. Very effective, and well, it's a cool scene because it almost looks like it's just gonna keep going.
And it's all done in one shot too.
Yeah, it just going, and then it just turns and just goes straight for him, and you're just fucking happy. And Anthony Hopkins figures it out, and he goes back to get Bob. And did you notice how Alec Baldwin was laying? As he's dead, by the way. Bob passed away. He's laying, and he's got his wrist upturned with the watch front and center. He just looks down at him, and they bag him. They get back, and they must have told everybody at the lodge that he was back. So how long were they gone for? Would we say 5 or 6 days? It couldn't have been.
I want to say more because of the beards.
Yeah, it might have been a week or two.
Yeah, I feel like it was a little while.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
They don't say it was less than a month. I'd say because they have stubble. Like it's not full beards.
Well, most of the transitions we get in the movie feel like almost like day to night transitions or night to day transitions, as opposed to like, and then a week passed.
Yeah, it's
not like a Castaway where we get one cut that suddenly takes us months down the road, wherever. Yeah. So I don't know, like a week or two maybe.
We'll give it a fortnight. We'll say 2 weeks tops. Sure. But they come back, and every reporter in the world is there.
Yeah.
They get back, and Anthony Hopkins is just being escorted, and he goes past LQ, and Jack, the Native American gentleman, is just standing there. I'm like, you fucking dick! Like
it's like that motherfucker's the reason I got trapped in the woods.
Yeah. Anthony Hopkins passes LQ, and he mentions what was on the paddle earlier, and he's like, "Why is the rabbit unafraid?" And LQ's like, "'Cause he's smarter than the bear." And we walk up, and Elle McPherson, she sees that Bob's on the slab. He didn't make it, and she kind of gives like a shit. And Anthony Hopkins walks up, and she just doesn't even hug him. She's just standing there, and he gives her the watch, basically. Like,
yeah, he hugs her. It's a very cold hug, and then he gives her Bob's watch, and symbolic of him knowing that she was stooping the help or whatever.
There was one little line that I forgot to mention when Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins are walking before they get to the cabin, the little the hunting hut. He's like, he's mentioning about some guy who said he was going to change his life, and he's like, well, I'm going to change mine. He's like, because when they were talking about the bear, he's like, I've always wanted to do something in my life that was unequivocal.
Yes.
Like, and then later on he mentions, like, you know what, I think I am going to change my life. He's like, well, you'd be the first one. But it feels like, I think that when he gets back that he's just going to be like, no, you have the money. You can have it all. I feel like he's just going to, like, build him a cabin out there. I feel like that's what he was going to do. But he just has, like, this exchanges looks with Elle McPherson, and then the reporters are bugging the shit out of him. Damn these people. Damn them to hell. He should have just, I'll give you each $100,000 to leave me alone. But yeah, and then we have the last line of the film,
which is quite good and delivered quite nicely. So Anthony Hopkins, again, does not show emotion too often in any film, especially this one. But they ask him, what about your friends? How did they die? And he starts to cry a little bit, and he says, they died saving my life. And fade to black. And then, special thanks to Bart the Bear and his trainer Doug Seuss for getting a special free credits. Thanks.
Yeah, Bart the Bear did really well.
Bart the Bear kicked ass.
He was very good. So, yeah.
Avengers Infinity War starring Bart the Bear.
Who was that dude in in Deadpool 2? The dad pants that he.
I don't know that actor's name, but
just the character. He was funny.
I mean, he had the look for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the sunblock on the bridge of the nose was perfect.
So yeah, that's pretty much the movie. I didn't mention at the top why I had Trevor watch this. This is one of those childhood movies that I think holds up very, very well. Like, it had an impact on me as a child, and it's still enjoyable to watch now. The cinematography is just great. Like, it's beautiful shots. It's filmed in Canada. Yeah, it's still a really good film. I think great performances. Alec Baldwin, Anthony Hopkins, both do really well. But yeah.
No, I told you off air, like I said, thank you for having me rewatch this, because I didn't remember it that well.
Mm-hmm.
But I forgot how much I like these kinds of movies, like man versus beast kind of movies. Like, this one takes it a step further and has like a personal conflict between the two survivor characters, but I don't know, it's just man versus nature. It's one of those stories that's eternal and is always going to resonate with you on some level. And the way it's shot and the way it's paced out, like, one of the comments I actually wrote down was when Bart the Bear appears at the creek where Anthony Hopkins is trying to fish. The timing of that scene was critical.
Yeah.
Because it's like just the right amount of time had passed between the last time we saw the bear, and it's like, okay, it's like, this is a good time to get back to that. And it's just a well-crafted film. And again, I can't wrap my head around the fact that this is the same man who directed Die Another Day, because that movie is kind of horseshit in a lot of ways.
I mean, I know David Mamet wrote Glengarry Glen Ross, but it might have just been James Bond had been thought to death at that point, and it was just it was that James Bond's end. Like, what was it? Tomorrow Never Dies. It goes GoldenEye, and then what's the second one with Pierce
Tomorrow
Brosnan?
Never Dies.
The one after that, The World Is Not Enough. That's
World Is Not Enough is kind of horseshit too.
Exactly. That's where it went wrong. So there shouldn't have been a fourth one.
Well, when you put it this way, aesthetically, just purely aesthetically speaking, 1997 and 2001 or 2, there's a world of difference between those years. Like, 2002 was not a pretty year for movies. Like, everybody was wearing clothes made of garbage bags.
all the bad things from the 90s was surviving from into the 2000s.
Still getting away from that. And so, like, yeah, 1997 I think actually was the year Tomorrow Never Dies came out. That one was all right. But just, like, I'm curious to know, like, was there a completely different editor involved in Die Another Day? Because that movie's cut to shit in a lot of ways. But anyway, I really enjoyed this movie, and I'm glad I rewatched it, because I think I might rewatch it again down the road.
Oh, yeah. I'll watch it again at some point. All right. Well, that's pretty much all I had to say about that.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us as we caught up on The Edge. Tune in next time.
Later.